Going back to the backhand seems like a very bold move when you're not at the top of your game, and particularly given how important the smash as a shot is for backhand players, and taking into account that Lebron's smash right now is, well, it's fair to say that it's definitely not what it used to be, but I'd also say that it's just, being honest, it's very erratic.
My thinking is that he's essentially trying to copy the Chingalan formula, which is a very offensive left-sided player with someone incredibly consistent. We know that both Lebron and Di Nenno are really fast, so their games are probably going to be quite suited to each other, similar to what Chingalan are and what they do. So I feel like it will be quite similar paddle, but I just don't. If I compare Lebron to Galan right now, and especially Galan on the left side and Lebron on the left side, I just see them miles apart.
So even though they're taking a gamble, they are going to have a 5,000 point gap with respect to the fourth seeded pair. So in a way, it's almost like they can trial and fail, and as a pair, they're not going to drop that far down. So I actually think that from that side, it's a really smart move, because their respective ex-partners, Paquito Navarro and Franco Stupaczuk, will not be playing together, and so they won't be able to team up and have a lot of points as a pair. So I think the only big difference, or one of the main differences with last year, or compared to last year, when you think about the Superpibes, is that last year there's only one pair they can beat, whereas this year it's Chingalan and Koya Tapia dominating. Now
Everyone, and welcome to the Paddle Pod, your weekly podcast covering professional paddle, presented by Hugo and Gons. We're on to episode 57, and as always, joined by my co-host Hugo here today. Hugo, how are you doing? It's great to have you on.
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks, Gons. Obviously, incredibly excited for this episode specifically, because we're back with the pair changes, which is, I got to be honest, it's one of my favorite topics to discuss, if not my favorite. It's just so much fun, so I can't wait to get started. But just wanted to let our fans know that we've just had our first lesson as a pair, first paddle lesson as a pair. And yeah, I think we did well, maybe not our best level as we hadn't played for a few days. And it was a pretty intense lesson. Nonetheless, looking forward to continuing and hopefully improving as a pair and improving our partnership.
Yeah, I can't wait. I mean, the introductory lesson is always a bit of it's never going to be the best one, because you're just doing a lot of exercises. The coach is just trying to figure out your level. But regardless, it was nice to be on the court with you this time and actually have a training session. And I'm not going to lie, I was nervous for some times, trying to impress you and stuff.
I mean, I've got to say, I think, I definitely was as well. And I was also nervous generally. I didn't want to look like a muppet on the court. Like when we had to keep the ball going and going off the back wall and making it a consistent kind of rally, it's quite, it makes you nervous, and automatically you play way worse than when actually you have to like win points. Anyway, yeah, it's just something to bring forward, but everyone gets nervous in their first lesson.
Yeah, of course. But as you said, very excited to crack on with the episode, because it is an absolute huge one, maybe the biggest one of the year. Well, I'm not sure, but I mean, it's an absolute massive one. And as you mentioned, some epic pair changes. I'm going to start calling this the pair roulette, because it generally does feel like that. And well, I don't know what the most shocking news is, but I'm sure everyone has heard. And if not, you're probably living under a rock or a cave. But on one side, we have Paquito and Lebrón splitting up. And on the other side, we also have Los Superpibes splitting up. So changes at the top to really disrupt what was becoming a very stale and very monotonous paddle tour, obviously dominated by Coello and Tapia and Chingalan. And another, well, maybe one of the more surprising changes as well, Lebron and Di Nenno officially joining forces. So not only is the fact that Paquito and Lebron and Los Superpibes are splitting up, but actually one from each pair are joining forces, and maybe the ones that you didn't think would join forces, because maybe a more obvious one would have been like Stupa and Lebron together. But yeah, I mean, Lebron and Di Nenno, maybe let's give our thoughts on that first. Hugo, what do you think?
Utter chaos. I would have never thought that Lebron and Di Nenno would team up, just full stop, let alone right now. I was absolutely baffled. What I'm still really intrigued to know is who called who, because I don't think it's clear yet. At least I haven't heard. Have you heard, Gons?
No,
No.
no
Same.
idea.
My initial feeling is that if well, I would say that it's probably been Di Nenno who has called Lebron, and I
Really?
tell you why. Well, because don't you think from Lebron's side, he already called Estupa previously when they were playing together, and obviously Galan called Di Nenno when it was Lebron and Galan still playing together, and the Superpibes decided to say no on both sides. So don't you think that given that Lebron's a forehand player and given that he'd already called Stupa, he would have gone back to that? Maybe not. Maybe that's what demonstrates that it's the other way around.
Yeah, the thing is, it's such a. I mean, in my mind, it's just such a risky move from Di Nenno. So for him to have started that just feels really weird. And we have seen that Lebron recently has really wanted to start playing more on the left. So for me, maybe that's why it would seem like Lebron is the one that called Di Nenno. But I mean, you could be completely right. You do have a fair point that initially we do know that Lebron contacted Stupa. So yeah, maybe actually it was Di Nenno. We were not certain, but I mean, I would think that it would be more Lebron calling Di Nenno, because like from Di Nenno's point of view, for me, it's like, what have you done?
It's baffling. I mean, yeah, just to give kind of an intro to my thoughts on how the pair can fare. I don't have very high hopes with them, to be totally honest. I think that Lebron right now is probably in one of the lowest moments of his career. I mean, I think his career has been going up, 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 literally right until his injury. And then it's just been going down steadily, which makes sense after an injury, but he really has never got back to that peak when he was the number one pair in the world alongside Galan. And it just seems really strange that given that he's not performing really well, he decides to change side and go back to the backhand. He hasn't played on that side full time since pre Paquito. So before he teamed up with Paquito and became the number one seeded pair in the world alongside Paquito Navarro. So that's like, say, 6 years or so. Going back to the backhand seems like a very bold move when you're not at the top of your game, and particularly given how important the smash as a shot is for backhand players, and taking into account that Lebron's smash right now is, well, it's fair to say that it's definitely not what it used to be, but I'd also say that it's just, being honest, it's very erratic. And I think for other pairs, straight away, if I was playing Di Nenno Lebron, I would try and go for Lebron. I would play as many balls to Lebron as possible to test him. I think mentally he's not in a great place right now. So that, coupled with the fact that he's not playing very well, coupled with the fact that his smash is not what it used to be and is not at a great level, I just think other pairs are going to really try and find him out. And I just wanted to add one quick point on, actually maybe two. One quick point on why I think Lebron has decided to do this. I almost think it's an ego shout from him. I think he's actually just said, look, I'm playing with Paquito and it hasn't worked. Maybe he's thinking that Paquito's not the right partner for him because he doesn't play that fast attacking paddle that Lebron has to play and has been successful with. And he's probably thinking, I'm going to put the weight on my shoulders. I'm going to carry my pair's weight and I'm going to try and beat Galan, Tapia and Estupa in that kind of cross-court backhand battle. I kind of have a feeling that could be the reason behind why he's teamed up with Di Nenno. Then from an emotional side, Di Nenno seems like a perfect player to play with because he's probably the most supportive pair that you can find out there. He's just always so positive, trying to find solutions. So I think Lebron, given that how emotional he is, he's a bit of a roller coaster emotionally. I think he's going to benefit a lot from playing with Di Nenno. So just to summarize my initial thoughts, I don't think they're going to do that well as a pair. I really struggle to see that. Definitely not challenging Chingalan and Guayon Tapia consistently and initially. But hey, I might be wrong. I mean, Gons, what are your initial thoughts?
No, I mean, to be honest, I completely agree with you. I think everything you said are kind of the points that I would also argue and I was also thinking, particularly on the smash. We know how important it is, especially on the left side. And then on top of that, you've got someone in Di Nenno who's not known for his winners. He doesn't have like a huge capacity to generate winners. So on the offensive side of the game, everything falls on Lebron. And Lebron's smash at the moment is just not where it needs to be if you really want to challenge at the top. When in front of you, you've got to face Galan and you've got to face Tapia and you've got to face Cuello. So I have a lot of concerns there. And we've seen as well the winners and unforced errors graph, and Lebron is always kind of in that like just a bit better than average, but he's not at the top. Now it is true potentially that being on the right side, it's if you're right-handed, it is harder to smash. You don't have such a big angle, but I just don't think that that's going to make a massive difference in the grand scheme of things when he moves to the left and maybe finds a smash a bit easier. I do agree with you that since his injury, he just really hasn't looked the same. And so on the mental side, I think it's important to highlight as well. I believe that to be a top left-sided player, you kind of have to be really mentally strong, because essentially the success at the pro level, right, falls mostly on you. Like, you're going to win matches because essentially the left-sided player is able to contribute and be really good offensively. That's how most matches are won, generally speaking. Of course, there are exceptions. So in this state that he is right now, and he hasn't been playing incredibly well lately, and he had a lot of pressure with Paquito, and let's be honest, I think that the pressure kind of got to both of them, because that's kind of the reason why they split. I'm just not sure if he's going to be able to handle all of that, being because he's going to be the one that needs to generate all the winners and going to be the one that's going to essentially win matches by himself. So I do agree with you that it does feel a bit of like an ego move in terms of like trying to demonstrate to everyone, like, hey, I am actually, one of or the best paddle player out there, and I can do it. Like, let me show you, I can switch sides and I can challenge at the top. But I'm just not sure if in the state of mind that he's in, that was like, it almost felt like an ego / a very rash decision to take. So I'm not sure that he's in the best moment mentally to be able to handle the pressure of having to win matches by himself. And essentially that's what it takes to go at the top. I think from a paddle perspective as well, my thinking is that he's essentially trying to copy the Chingalan formula, which is a very offensive left-sided player with someone incredibly consistent. We know that both Lebron and Di Nenno are really fast, so their games are probably going to be quite suited to each other, similar to what Chingalan are and what they do. So I feel like it will be quite similar paddle. But yeah, I just don't. If I compare Lebron to Galan right now, and especially Galan on the left side and Lebron on the left side, I just see them miles apart.
No, I totally agree. I think that's a really good point that you've just raised. I think they are almost trying to mimic the Chingalan formula: a defensive, consistent forehand player and an attacking, aggressive backhand player who takes a lot of the play, leads a lot of the play, plays the majority of the balls. But Galan right now is the best player in the world, to be honest. So I think the formula works for him. Now, Lebron is not in his best moment, and he's not playing very well, at least for his standards. Obviously, he's Juan Lebrón. So that's why I think I'm not super encouraged. What I would say is 2 big points in favor of the pair. One is throwing in that randomness, because no one's really played against Lebron on the backhand for a very long time. And if he starts well, maybe we know how important it is those first couple of tournaments. If they maybe reach a final in one of the first few tournaments, they play against Cuello Tapia or Chingalan, and they have a good game, they beat them. I think the unpredictability of a pair that's just teamed up has traditionally played a lot in that pair's favor. So, we've seen how Chingalan, how well they've done against Cuello and Tapia right from the start, probably because Cuello and Tapia haven't really managed to figure them out and struggled to figure them out at the start. So that could definitely play to their favor. I also think, as I've mentioned briefly, that personality-wise, Martín Di Nenno and Juan Lebrón can match up really well. You have one really calm, positive player, hard worker, etc. And then you've got Juan Lebrón, who obviously has, everyone knows he's got a big ego, but absolutely fair enough. The top athletes in the world and the GOATs always have big egos. You think about Djokovic, Federer, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, they all have egos, Ronaldo, etc. So it's absolutely fair enough. And I think that's what's helped him be one of the best players in the world and in recent times. So I think that his personality can match up really well with Di Nenno's. And I think him saying, hey, I'm going to carry my pair's weight, I'm going to get back to the level that I should be playing at, and that's how I'm going to get back to the top, is a bold move, but fair play to him. I mean, chapeau in a way. And then one final point that I think could really help this pair is the point situation, which I think is really important. Now, Lebron, Di Nenno teaming up, I think they're going to be on something like 18,000 points, more or less. And then the next pair, so the fourth ranked pair, maybe we won't mention their names yet, just to kind of keep the mystery going. But I think they're going to be on something like 13,000 points. That's a massive, massive gap. So even though they're taking a gamble, they are going to have a 5,000 point gap with respect to the fourth seeded pair. So in a way, it's almost like they can trial and fail. And as a pair, they're not going to drop that far down. So I actually think that from that side, it's a really smart move because their respective ex-partners, Paquito Navarro and Franco Stupaczuk, will not be playing together. And so they won't be able to team up and have a lot of points as a pair. So I think that's an interesting angle that maybe, well, I wanted to mention and we should probably take into account.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that I didn't think about that, and that is very interesting. It's almost like a kind of like a risk-free investment, right? You've got all the upside of it going incredibly well, but in terms of actual downside, I don't see much to it other than just not continuing to win and maybe not feeling that great. But from a standings perspective, they're not going to go much further down, to be honest. So that is actually really, really interesting. And on the positive side as well, I wanted to add, and it's a bit related to sort of the mental side, and you mentioned some top athletes, and I think it's important as well that to mention that these athletes, a lot of the times they use like these kind of like, let's just call it like negative media or like opinions of people potentially like us, just basically saying that we don't really believe in them. And they use that as fuel to actually motivate them and to prove people wrong. I mean, Michael Jordan, one of the probably most famous, I guess, athletes that sort of does this. If anyone's seen The Last Dance, he just tells every time how he basically every time someone said like you can't do this or another person wants something, like he just used it as motivation and to prove everyone wrong, and he did. So if Lebron kind of has that edge, and we know how competitive he is, he could potentially use this as motivation because everyone's kind of really just going at him and kind of like really sort of stating like, why are you doing this? Why are you switching to the left side? You're not really going to be able to compete. So from that angle, if he can use it as motivation and fuel, then it could really take them a long way. And I do like as well your point around Martín Di Nenno being really stable and kind of being a perfect partner in that sense for Lebron, who's a bit more emotional on court. Now, we've talked about the Lebron side. We haven't really talked about the Di Nenno side. Why do you think Di Nenno would accept Lebron's offer, or the other way around? Why do you think Di Nenno called Lebron if that was the case?
Well, I think it must go down to the sense that, to the fact that Di Nenno's feeling that his partnership with Stupaczuk is not going to be what it's been for the last year and a bit. Obviously, last year they did really, really well, having teamed up. They challenged for the number one rank, and they've almost actually managed to clinch it right at the end of the season. I mean, it was down to the last tournament, if I'm not mistaken. So I think he's probably just feeling that there's something missing there. And he feels that the dynamic regarding Chingalan and Goya Tapia dominating every tournament is going to continue that way. I mean, obviously, we're not with the players on a day-to-day basis, so we don't know what goes on during trainings, what's said during tournaments after the big losses that they've had against Chingalan. So I think that just must be the feeling. And that's actually going back to my point on why I think, I got completely mixed up because I was thinking that's why I think Di Nenno called Lebron. But Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to say. It's hard to call. But from the Nenno's point of view, I genuinely think that he probably doesn't trust him. He doesn't think that him and Stupa are going to get back to the level they are, or at least be able to challenge the top two pairs. That's my feeling, at least. But genuinely, I personally, I disagree. I mean, we saw how throughout last season, they struggled to beat Goya and Dabia during basically the first 6 months. I mean, they only beat them once. And then as soon as they had that big win against Goya and Dabia in Valladolid, the season completely turned and they were the best pair for the second half of the season. And actually, a recent interview with Yanguas, featuring Yanguas, he said that he thought the Superpibes were going to turn their season around now and they were going to start winning tournaments, and he felt that they were going to be back on the up. So other players thinking that they're going to be back winning, and Di Nenno thinking that that's not the case. I mean, he must have some info, or he must have a feeling that we're not aware of.
Little did Yanguas know, because he's going to be affected very much by this split. But yeah, maybe let me just start off by saying how incredibly sad I am that Los Superpibes are splitting up. I think they're one of the most loved pairs on tour. It's just such a nice story. To players that have been playing together since they were really, really, really young kids. Then we know that Martín Di Nenno suffered that terrible accident. We didn't even know if he was going to play paddle again. And now, after both of them essentially going through their own journey, they managed to then come together. They're both from Argentina. They're incredibly lovely guys. They just throw so much energy on court. They fight for every ball. And they had an incredible year last year, fighting for the number one right until essentially the last tournament, really. And let me just give you some overhead stats of their partnership. So 36 tournaments played together, 7 titles, 9 finals, 17 semifinals. So it's incredibly sad that they've split because, like I said, they are sort of like fan favorites. But from the Nenno's side, it just makes not as much sense as Lebron's side. To me, it's just so illogical why he would split from Stupa. And I completely agree with you. It almost felt like they just needed that really one big win to essentially unlock their season. And it's not like they were like terrible. They were getting semifinals consistently. And it just, last year it kind of went the same way. You mentioned it, right? Okay, they did have that win at the beginning of the season against Goya and Tapia, but they like lost on the bounce like so many times, like at least 6 or 7 times, and then they managed to win. So I don't understand why this time they really couldn't, I guess, exercise that patience that they did last year. So it's a bit of a shame. And but you did mention as well, we really don't know what's going on inside, right? Maybe they're just tired of seeing each other on a daily basis. And we have seen some, I guess, rocky benches from them, which maybe in the past we hadn't seen. So yeah, to me, the decision by Di Nenno is just it's strange because it's a massive gamble from Lebron's side. I think it makes complete sense, or I can see why he would have done it. But from the Nenno side, leaving Stupa for Lebron to change side, it's very, very risky.
The only thing I would say, and maybe a point that we haven't mentioned, is that, funnily enough, I've watched and seen a lot of interviews with Di Nenno, and a lot of times he's been asked, who do you think are the best players ever, etc. And he always mentions Lebron. He always talks about Lebron. He says that he's one of the best players ever, one of the best players of recent times. So I think obviously playing with an idol is a huge part of it. I mean, we've seen how, for example, Tello's playing with Bella right now. And I mean, let's be honest, their levels are various kind of cohorts away of each other. Tello right now is various levels ahead of Bella, but he's playing with him probably because of how much he's idolized him, and given that it's his last year, and so as a learning experience. And I think Di Nenno's probably thinking, from a points perspective, we're going to be the third seeded pair for a very, very long time unless things turn and suddenly go tits up. So excuse the expression. So why not take the gamble? Learn from an ex number one in the world, a player who's been the number one seeded player in the world for over 5 years, and who knows what could happen. And I just think it's that chaotic element that probably no one would have expected Chingalan to do so well right from the start, and they have. So who knows? Maybe this could help. I mean, I think the only big difference, or one of the main differences with last year, or compared to last year, when you think about the Superpibes, is that last year there's only one pair they can beat, whereas this year it's Chingalan and Goya Dabia dominating. Now, I know the draws have meant that they haven't actually played Goya Dabia at all, or very little. It's just that they've lost to Chingalan every time. But I think maybe if the matter was that they're the second seeded pair and they're in the race, maybe they would have stuck together. But given that there's two pairs that right now are kind of, well, various levels above them, that's probably what's, given them that extra push. At least that's what I think.
Yeah, it definitely felt like something needed to change because every time we watched the top two pairs essentially battling out with the third and the fourth, we just knew what the outcome was going to be, right? And nothing really seemed like was going to change. So I guess in their eyes, they definitely needed this sort of this push to change things and to hopefully challenge. And actually, funnily enough, I'm not sure if you've seen the draw for the upcoming P2 in Genoa, but for the first time, Coyo and Tapia are going to be facing Los Superpibes, or they are in the same side of the draw, and then Chingalan on the same side as Paquito Navarro. Funny how just things do work out in the end. But yeah, maybe we should move on to the next player affected by this. Of course, is Martín Di Nenno's teammate, Franco Stupaczuk, who, well, there were a bit of rumors that he was first going to go with Cardona, but then this was pulled back, and now we know, and it's been it hasn't been officially released, I don't think, but I mean, it's kind of been confirmed by reliable sources that he's going to be pairing up with Mike Yanguas, one of we both think the most improved player this season, having a tremendous season alongside Javi Garrido. And this is a huge move for Yanguas. I mean, really the first time that he's with a top left-sided player. And I think a smart move from Stupa, to be honest. I think he's essentially chosen the best of the rest, as we did call Yanguas and Garrido. So maybe Hugo would like to get your thoughts on it.
Just to clarify, even Di Nenno and Lebron's partnership isn't 100% confirmed. No posts have been released. Fair. But let's be honest, I mean, everything's gone off, and these rumors are always, they always end up being true. So let's just take them as the partnerships. Yeah, Stupa Yanguas, I think it's a hell of a partnership. Genuinely, I think they can do really, really well. I mean, Yanguas this season has been one of the best forehand players on the tour. And Stupa, I mean, we know he's one of the top 3-4 best backhand players on the tour. So I just think it makes a lot of sense. I think that their styles can suit each other. They're both fast. They're both attacking. I think personality-wise, Stupa has demonstrated that he can deal with all sorts of personalities. He's dealt with Pablo Lima. He's dealt with Sanyo. He's dealt with Martín Di Nenno. He's dealt with Alex Ruiz, and he's won tournaments with all his pairs. So I think even though maybe when you think about Yanguas straight away, you'd say, he's a tough personality to deal with. I think Stupa is probably one of the best players to just kind of adapt to who he's playing with. So I think that in that sense, they fit. And I think Yanguas is probably, because, for example, when you think about Yanguas when he was playing with Bella, he wasn't that aggy on the bench because he was probably just in awe of playing with his idol. Now, obviously, Stupa isn't Bella, but I do think that Stupa is one of padel's legends. So maybe that means that Yanguas has an extra level of kind of calmness and more understanding. So I think their personalities match, and I think their game styles match, and they're two fantastic players. So I'm actually really excited to see how they do. And to be honest, if I had to bet on who do I think is going to do better between them and Martín and Lebron, I'd probably say Yanguas and Stupa, to be totally honest. My only question around that is I don't know whether they kick off as the 4th seeded pair or the 5th seeded pair. I think they're the 4th seeded pair. So it's going to depend on the draws a lot, and they will have to make up a big points difference compared to Di Nenno and Lebron. But I just think if you take their performances from 0, I would put my money on Yanguas and Stupa doing better than Di Nenno and Lebron.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a safer bet. I think potentially they might be losing. So Stupa might be losing a bit kind of more consistency, but I think he's kind of making it up with more offensive, I guess, proficiency. And to your point on the benches as well, it's kind of different, I feel, for Yanguas to have Garrido sitting on the bench versus Stupa sitting on the bench, right? I could see Yanguas kind of thinking like, I'm better than Garrido. And you could argue that Yanguas was maybe the better player of the pair. Now, I don't think Yanguas is going to start with Stupa thinking like, oh, I'm definitely better than Stupa, right? I mean, Stupa's got all the titles. He's got the ranking. He's, been so close to the number one, and Yanguas doesn't have that. So definitely don't think that Yanguas will be causing a lot of chaos, let's say, on the bench.
Who knows?
Well, yeah, or maybe just give him a couple of tournaments and then he'll be all over. But yeah, I think it's a really good move from Stupa, and yeah, really exciting pair as well to watch. Love both of their styles. They're going to be really offensive, so it's going to be great. And maybe moving on, unless you maybe have any more thoughts on them.
Yeah, all I wanted to mention is I understand Stupa teaming up with Yanguas. I understand that obviously Stupa, from Yanguas' perspective, Stupa is a better player than Garrido, to be totally honest. And he's won tournaments. He's got more points, etc. But Garrido and Yanguas have been doing so well this season, and they actually beat Los Superpibes. Well, I don't know how many times they've faced each other, but they've already beaten them. So my only question is that I think that the team that they'd formed, Yanguas, Garrido, with Juan Mieres as their coach, they were doing really well. It's a bit of a bold move to just kick that away and jump ship when they're having such a good season. I know that an opportunity of playing with one of the best players in the world only comes every now and then. So I understand Yanguas' decision-making, but it's a bold move. And then from a kind of in-game perspective, we've seen how all the players that play with Stupa have to adapt to the fact that they're going to be playing, well, kind of for Stupa, trying to make him shine under Pozzoni's kind of ideology, because Stupa only worked with Pozzoni. At least that's been the case in recent times. So Yanguas, we don't know whether he's going to stick with Juan Mieres, because Juan Mieres seemed to be more Yanguas' coach than Garrido's. Like that's basically what's been going on so far. So are Juan Mieres and Pozzoni both going to be the coaches for Stupa and Yanguas? I don't know, but I don't think it would be a great idea for Yanguas to move away from Juan Mieres, because I think he's done really well. I think he's been a great coach for Yanguas, and he's got him playing the best paddle of his life. So it's a slight risk on that side, but I completely get his decision.
Yeah, I think that, I don't think he'll split from Juan Mieres. I agree with you. He's been like such a catalyst for Yanguas, but potentially he'll be like a secondary coach, I guess, that when they're not playing and stuff like that, I'll train with Juan Mieres. I'm not sure if we'll see Juan Mieres on the bench, though, to be honest. I mean, as you mentioned, Pozzoni is like the sort of main guy of Stupa, has never really gone away from him. So, and he's made it clear, like, part of the sort of leaks that have been going on when Stupa was calling, let's say, Cardona and stuff, Cardona actually did say that he got the call from Stupa and Pozzoni. So it's almost like they're just like recruiting together. They come together. If you're playing with Stupa, you're going to get Pozzoni as a coach. So I don't see that changing. And yeah, it's a fair point. Let's see how Yanguas can adapt to Pozzoni. But hopefully he does not lose Mieres, because I think, as you mentioned, such a pivotal piece to what he has been able to do this year.
Agreed. So yeah, maybe moving on to the final kind of big pair that's been announced is actually announced literally today. So Monday, the 1st of July. Sources have confirmed that Paquito Navarro will be teaming up with Pablo Cardona, who originally was meant to be Stupa's coach, as you actually just mentioned just a few minutes ago. And actually apparently Stupa already had a training session with Pablo Cardona, but then they'd already made it clear that if Yanguas was prepared to jump ship and basically team up with Stupa, then that was Stupa's priority. So Paquito Navarro has decided to call up Pablo Cardona, and obviously Cardona has said yes. I mean, makes total sense.
Yeah.
He's teaming up with one of the best backhand players in the world, top 4. And I think Paquito's season has actually individually been quite good. I think he's been better than Lebron in that partnership. And I think he can continue to do really well. I think his level is up there, maybe not right at its peak, but up there. So yeah, maybe just wanted to get your thoughts on that, Gons. What do you think? How do you think Cardona and Paquito are going to fare?
So I think let me start with the positive side. Um, we know that Paquito isn't an out and out finisher. We know that the game right now, it's kind of like one of the main requirements if you want to be at the top. And we know that Cardona is an incredible aggressive player. And that's sort of his main attribute and his main asset is his smash. So I think in that sense is good. It's great because Cardona is going to be able to cover a lot of the aerial play. He has no problem stepping into sort of the other person's side of the court and just use the smash. I mean, we saw it with Bergamini when Bergamini was it was like a situational pair. We've seen it with Javier Ruiz. I mean, he has absolutely no problem in getting his smash and covering a lot of court. So I think that's a positive. And also, funnily enough, I mean, Padel Intelligence have done like a kind of a small like analysis, trying to think like what kind of player would complement Paquito the most. And we see that Paquito is kind of a consistent, not extremely aggressive. So they kind of suggested like what would Paquito look like with a left-sided player who's a bit more aggressive. And the names that they gave were Coelho, Cardona, and John Sanz. And I'll post this graph so like people can see the sort of characteristics of each player. And Cardona would give Paquito a lot more attack and aggressiveness, as just mentioned. But he's less weight consistent, obviously. So I think on the positive side, so that's basically the positive side. I think on the negative side, firstly, Cardona is very young. He likes to go up a lot. He's very erratic. He's very inconsistent. And we've seen that Paquito now with Lebron, that really hasn't worked out. So I kind of don't know if that's the style that's suited for him. I mean, the best Paquito that we've seen really in recent times, it's when he's been with like your classic forehand player, aka Chingoto, aka Di Nenno. That's been where he's been at the peak and the best. And then another aspect as well is he going to essentially adapt to the fact that now Cardona is going to take up a lot more volume than Paquito's used to, especially offensively. And I think that's a big adjustment. I think that's a bigger adjustment that people realize. To me, Paquito is best when he's kind of not on that first, second ball, but he has a lot of rhythm of volume. He has a lot of rhythm of ball, and then he can feel it and he can play out different kind of shots. He's not the kind of player that, doesn't touch the ball for a couple of shots and then all of a sudden can go in under and like smash it and win the point. So if I'm honest, I'm a bit more concerned than I am optimistic of the pair, because when I think about the positives and the negatives, to me, it's more likely that these negatives are the kind of things that prevail than the positives.
I totally agree. Being totally honest, my initial thought is I don't think they're going to be challenging for kind of semi-finals consistently, which should be what Paquito aims for. Now, I do understand that from Paquito's side, it's really hard for him to try and find a partner that's going to get him into the semi-finals consistently. If Yanguas has been taken by Stupa and Di Nenno and Lebron have teamed up, I mean, it's a bit of a shit show for Paquito, to be totally honest. I would have actually thought that Paquito straight away would have called Yanguas. I think they would have been a great pair. I genuinely think so. And yeah, I mean, Paquito's situation was tough. As I said, I don't think he had that many options. So I do think Cardona is one of the best options that he could pick. But I just don't think their game styles are going to match that well. Cardona is really aggressive. He's going to try and get tight to the net. He's going to want a lot of the ball, and Paquito likes to sit back. We know how much he's struggled with Lebron almost being caged in that system and trying to push forward, but not being able to because Paquito likes playing an extra lob and an extra ball before he goes into attack mode. So, yeah, I don't think their game styles match up that well. Now, what I also don't like is that personality-wise, Cardona is a very hot-headed player, because we've seen that sometimes in matches he loses his head. He tries to go for too many winners. And obviously, when he's in form, he's sometimes unplayable because he's so strong. His smash is unbelievable. He's really powerful, etc. But I think he does lose his head sometimes. And Paquito is hot-headed. I know that he's a lot more calm than he used to be, but he is hot-headed. And that's probably what's one of the reasons why his partnership with Lebron hasn't worked. So I just think personality-wise, they're two very emotional players that traditionally, or at least in my eyes, I don't think that goes down really well. I don't think that's going to help the pair. So yeah, I mean, being honest, I don't have super high expectations for the pair. They're both individually very good players, and I think Cardona in the very near future is going to do really, really well. Obviously, he's already doing really, really well. He's having a great season. But as you mentioned, Paquito's recent best performances have been alongside both Martín Di Nenno, mainly Martín Di Nenno, because obviously, again, alongside Di Nenno, he challenged for the number one position in the world a couple of years ago, but also alongside Chingoto. They were just consistently in the in the semi-finals, tournament in every single tournament, and they actually managed to win their last tournament together. So I personally would have tried to go for a forehand, just more of a forehand traditional type player, maybe even Eduardo Alonso, who's kind of free and he's been doing really well. I know that he'll generate far fewer winners, but I just think that I almost think that suits Paquito more than Cardona. And actually, just one last shout on who I think Paquito could have had a great partnership with. I know it's bold, but I do think that Coqui Nieto would be a hell of a forehand player. And I think he would be that kind of work dog that would just make very few unforced errors and consistently just perform and create space for Paquito to finish the points. And I actually think that they're both players that are very happy kind of sitting at the back and slowly transitioning forward. But Coqui is obviously having a hell of a season alongside John Sant and having a hell of a season on the backhand. So it would be a bold move.
Yeah, it'd be a very bold move, but I'm sure at some point we'll see Coqui Nieto on the right. He's just got like that profile of a player to be a fantastic right-sided player. And so actually on the analysis that Padel Intelligence did, sort of thinking who would be the best pair of Paquito on the right side, they did mention that Yanguas would have been the sort of best pair. So I mean, and I completely agree with it and your points as well, Hugo. It's just going to be very interesting to see, but I kind of agree as well. I just don't see them really challenging for the kind of semi-finals, and it will be tough, I think, out there. And you mentioned this to me maybe even a couple of days ago, but now thinking about it, I think Sanyo even like I would have just called him back. Like, to be honest, like they've done that when they started the season, a couple of semifinals. Yeah, they had the first match was a rocky start, but then they were quite consistent, always losing to Koy and Tapia. So I mean, to be honest, if he kind of wants to be there, but look, we don't know. Maybe it would have been weird to call Sanyo back. I don't know, but in any case, maybe moving on to the last piece of the puzzle, because this is the only kind of player that's been left hanging due to all this chaos. And I feel bad for this man. And we're talking about Javi Garrido, who's Yanguas' partner. And I feel so bad. I mean, the guy is so unlucky because last year he had an absolute nightmare of a season, playing with so many different partners, so many different players. And for once, he had someone that it was a long-term project. It worked incredibly well. They're both playing the best part of the season. And now Yanguas has gone on and dumped him. So, yeah, maybe just really quick, Hugo, kind of 2-3 shouts. Who do you think Javi Garrido should go for?
I mean, being totally honest, I really only see one top option for him, and it's Eduardo Alonso. I just think the fact that he's kind of free. I know that reportedly he's teamed up with Alex Chozas, but I think, I mean, if Garrido suddenly becomes available, you have to go with him. And I just think Garrido doesn't really have many forehand options available. I mean, it looks like Coqui and John are really solid together. And I don't actually think that John and Garrido would match really well because they're both very attacking, quite hot-headed. and they both want a lot of the court. So I just, who would go down the middle to try and gain that?
Yeah.
I mean, win that smash. I mean, probably Garrido because he's got the better smash, but I don't think John would be very happy about that. And defensively, they would struggle a lot. So I don't think John Sanz is an option. So just thinking of other options. I mean, Lucas Bergamini, maybe. I mean, he's a classic forehand player. He hasn't had a great season alongside Victor Ruiz, so maybe it's time for a change. But beyond that, I really struggle. So yeah, I mean, maybe one other one, Sanyo. I think that could be interesting.
That could be very interesting.
I know that Sanyo's just announced that he's teamed up with Alex Arroyo, but I mean, I'm Sanyo. Yeah. I get called by Garrido. 100%. Being honest, I would say I'm really sorry, but I'm going to go with Garrido. I mean, thinking about the points, that's probably the most important.
Yeah.
But just B, the fact that Garrido is having a hell of a season and is a better player than Arroyo. So yeah, I genuinely think that it's going to be Edu Alonso. I don't have many doubts, but what do you think, Ons? Any other options?
No, I think the two that you just mentioned, I really like, both Edu Alonso and Sanyo. I don't think, like you said, John Sanz would be kind of fantasy, really. The kind of two of the best kind of players, maybe out of the ones we've mentioned, but let's be honest, they just wouldn't work. So I completely agree with you. Edu and Sanyo would be my top picks for Garrido. But yeah, I feel bad for him because he's been really unlucky. But yeah, Hugo, I mean, if you don't have any other thoughts, I think maybe this brings us to the end of the episode.
Yeah, just maybe one last shout. Just wanted to put my hand up and say that obviously me thinking that Paquito and Lebron were suddenly going to do really well and have a hell of a season and end up as I think I said the number 2 ranked pair at the end of 2024 was obviously not a good shout in hindsight. So, yep, I pulled my pants down in that sense. And yeah, just excited to see how these new pairs fare. And obviously we have Lucho Capra and Maxi Sanchez have been confirmed as a pair once again, version 17.0. I mean, they probably just called each other and said, yeah, same place, same time. There was never really any doubt. But yeah, just other than that, I've had a lot of fun and we'd love to hear some thoughts on behalf of our fans, just who do they think is going to be the best pair out of the new pairs that have been announced? Can any of them change the current course of the season regarding Chingalan and Goya Tapia dominating? Who's made the biggest mistake? Who's in the worst situation? Any thoughts would be welcome. Yeah,
it'd be really interesting to hear what everyone's got to say. And regarding Chingalan, I'm not going to tell I told you so, but I did tell you so. I'm gloating here because I think I said Lebron and Galan were going to be number 1 this year. So yeah, I mean, I also was terribly wrong with that one. But yeah, it's been a great episode, Hugo. As always, really enjoyed this discussion of the Padel Roulette. It's just so much fun, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's right up there with the most interesting, the most fun to comment and chat about. So excited to see what's to come. I mean, Lebron Di Nenno, just so rogue. I don't know what's going to happen, so I can't wait to watch them.
Yeah, me too. And yeah, make sure everyone to tune in because we do have the P2 in Genoa this week. And like I mentioned, we could potentially see finally Goya and Tapia against the Superpibes and Chingalan against Paquito and Lebron, the first time Galan and Lebron actually face each other. So that would be pretty epic. And yeah, I hope that everyone did enjoy that. Please leave a like and do subscribe, and obviously leave us your thoughts as well in the comment section. And yeah, Hugo, it's been a pleasure as always.
Cheers, guys.